Voidspire Tactics definitely brings out that old school Final Fantasy vibe of going on an adventure with your party and saving the world from the big bad evil guy. I've seen other people compare this game's freedom to Divinity Original Sin, but I have never played it, so I can't make that comparison. But I can say that they're not lying. The game does give you a lot of freedom that you can do with the spells. Before going into the game, you're probably going to have to change the resolution in the settings menu. And if you look around, you'll notice that there's not many options to select in the settings. The two notable settings are the difficulty and AI sliders that you can change at any time during the game. So it's a nice way to set up your own dynamic difficulty if you want to go full-on game journalist mode or hardcore gamer. When you first play the game, there is a good amount of stuff to learn, but luckily the developer was kind enough to put in a journal that acts like a quick help guide that you can use. And your little Microsoft Clippy book does build up as you examine more of the world. During your adventure on the Voidspire, which is a floating island in the sky, you'll encounter a couple of different environments. There are caves, cliffsides, forests, a swamp-like area, and a couple of towns that you can explore. Some of the areas that you come across will have gimmicks to them. For example, the swamp-like area, you have to sail from island to island, and the caves, of course, are dark. But some of the gimmicks allow the game to express its mechanics more better, such as using a rope and a piston to scale down a cliffside, or having to cut through bushes to reveal a secret in the forest. The story of this game takes a back seat, and it's more like a means to an end to explore the entire island. The story elements are mainly revealed midway through, so in the beginning you'll probably feel lost on what exactly is going on. Then everything is just dumped at you at once. To sum it up without spoiling anything, there's a big bad guy. He has a lot of magical power, like a mad scientist trying to find Half-Life 3 source code, and you and your party are there to stop the bad guy's foolish ambitions. It definitely feels like one of those old school simple plot lines that just get the job done. Also, how it has a medieval mixed with industrial technology type of setting really sells the Final Fantasy vibe. Like any other RPG, this one has a class system where you can school your opponents with various disciplines to choose from. For each party member, you're allowed to pick one primary class and one secondary class. You're free to pick and choose whatever you want for those classes, so you can be like a warrior, battle mage, or a necromancer, healer, whatever you want. Whatever you do pick for your primary and secondary classes, those are the abilities that you're allowed to use, as well as the base stats that those classes give. And whatever you have set as your primary class is the only class that will gain XP at the end of battle. You unlock more as you level up certain classes. Also, the stat upgrades that you use from the attribute points and the passives that you unlock are permanent, so you don't have to have a certain class as your primary or secondary to have those benefits applied to you. The race of your characters also gives some benefits, like if you pick a human, they get 10% bonus XP, while the snake class has a better chance of being a politician. If you ever want to see the stats of your character, it's a bit hidden. It's the little trading card looking button in the top right corner of the area that shows the character's health, mana, and their name and whatnot. Some of the classes are pretty cool, like one's a mechanic that can summon up turrets to shoot down enemies. Another one is called the Gatekeeper, who can teleport and summon up like little pools of fire or summon a lightning storm to cast lightning on enemies. However, classes like that are better used more in the late game because of how much mana they use or points needed to actually make it viable in combat. It also depends on how your party is set up, so if you have a team full of healers, you probably won't get anywhere. And if they're all just glass cannons, then you might have a chance, but they're probably going to shatter. But as I said before, you're free to change your classes as you see fit at any time. Speaking of being able to do anything at any time, this game gives a good amount of freedom of what you can do. You can steal whatever, break things for loot, use spells to clear obstacles, craft things that feel intuitive, like putting a rag doused in oil in a bottle of oil creates a signature drink to roofie someone. It feels like the world is a playbox. There is the possibility of getting stuck when using spells, but there is an item that warps you back to the first merchant that you meet by clicking on the little gem in the corner of your abilities bar. The exploration in this game kind of works like how you start off in a main hub, then there's different directions that lead off to linear paths, each with their own styles and gimmicks like I said earlier. So you pick a path, explore it until the end, then there are shortcuts that are well designed and convenient that can bring you back to the main hub. Some of the paths are locked off until you learn how to jump like a basketball player, or the enemies in the area are just too strong for you. You have to level up a bit before you can go on. There are secrets that you can find, like digging up an item, or you can build a bridge to get the loot on the other side. Things like that help showcase the interaction you can have with the world, but honestly, there's not a whole lot of opportunities to use that freedom unless you go out of your way to use like a certain class that can set up the terrain, like placing grass on the ground. Then if you use a fire spell, it'll help spread the fire and burn the enemies. Building things only happens a couple of times, and in one area I couldn't freeze the water for some reason, with no indication for why I couldn't. But for reference, you have to have a high enough jump ability to make it across the gap, take one of the two secret paths, or just teleport across it. I believe that this might just be a bug since this restriction never happened anywhere else. The combat in this game isn't that difficult as long as you keep your gear up to date. There's no reason to grind for levels, plus you can't really grind that well anyway since enemies only respawn in certain areas like a campfire. You do have the option to talk for peace with enemies in certain encounters, that way you can avoid fighting and you'll be able to trade with them. To get an idea of what option to choose, you can use the look tool on them, but it's different for every encounter, so it's more or less still up to chance. When it comes to weapons, you do have a good arsenal to choose from, like spears, bows, crossbows, pistols, rifles, axes, even your fists if you just want to slap some people, or whip out some Wing Chun moves that you learned by watching Kung Fu movies. There is a weapon durability system, but honestly it's so infrequent that you probably don't even have to worry about it. It only happened to me twice, once from usage, and the other from the enemy using an ability that broke my weapon. You do get plenty of repair tools, and you can always craft more items by using the smithing stuff, anvils and whatnot. So honestly, weapon breaking isn't a big deal. On that note, elemental weaknesses don't really matter in this game. It's far better just to max out one specialty and use that solely throughout the game. One thing that actually is useful though, for once in an RPG, is gold. It's actually good throughout the entire game. You don't just accumulate so much that it just becomes worthless. If you play normally, you'd get a good amount to actually spend on stuff. But if you are a kleptomaniac just collecting everything and selling it all, you're just wasting your time. The game scales nicely if you just sell a few things whenever you return to base and explore for the game's secrets. The looting and inventory management can take a while due to the nature of the game of having to click and drag. There's no shortcut to it. Nearly every item can be useful until you can get better equipment, kind of like advancing from the Stone Age to Iron. A tip to actually speed up other parts of the game though is to hold down the spacebar to speed up enemy turns, and to use the right mouse button to go backwards in dialogue in case you skipped over something or want to reread a line. The only problem I had with combat and looting is when an enemy died where a wall tile was, so it obscures the tile that he died on when the combat is done. That way you can't loot the body. It's like he found the ultimate hide and seek spot. Luckily, this issue only happened once. The music in Voidspire Tactics is fantastic. I usually don't like this genre of music. I wouldn't really listen to it. Within the game, it gives that sense of adventure, and whenever you're fighting like little robot mechanic things, it gives that funky tune for machinery, and for big fights, it gives like these sweet guitar riffs that go on and play. It really pumps you up. It fits perfectly within the game. All the soundtracks feel like they came straight from the SNES era. I do have to say that they're not masterpieces, and some of them don't meet the same standard as the other songs in the game, but for the game's style and what it's going for, it works fantastically. The game took me about 16 hours to complete, and when you beat it, you do get new races to play as, an XP multiplier, and a difficulty mode called Ruin. Voidspire Tactics is a fantastic game. I would recommend it for anyone that likes the old style of the Final Fantasy games, or anybody that just likes these type of tactical RPG games. It also serves as a nice introduction to this genre of games. That's it for this one. Hopefully you found this video helpful, and thank you for watching. See ya.